Critical New Testament scholar, textual critic Bart Ehrman, who criticizes the Bible, he's written books about this stuff, came with a horrible take about contradictions in the Christmas story. And our buddy Red Pin Logic set him straight.
One of the things I do with my students, they know the Christmas story, the wise men, and you get the shepherds, have them read Matthew, and just make a list of what happens in Matthew, this. Then I have them read Luke and make the same list for Luke. And is there anything that cannot be reconciled? It blows their minds. You realize, whoa, after Jesus is born, Mary has to make an offering in the temple. And then they go straight back to Nazareth, which is about 100 miles to the north up in Galilee.
So here's the map, right? And by the way, I've been here. These places aren't close. Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, the Sea of Galilee. This is where Tel Aviv is. These places are not close. These places are far. And that's one of the dopest parts about going to Israel. You get to see the context, right? So you can go from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, but Bethlehem to Nazareth is mad far. Capernaum is mad far. These places they're drives. They're like 2-hour drives with traffic or whatever. And so he's saying that based on the timeline of what Matthew says and what Luke says, these things are contradictions. Okay? This is going to be Bart Ehrman's point.
Galilee. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus is born and Joseph is warned that Herod is now going to try and kill the child. And so Joseph takes the family and goes down to Egypt, and they stay there till Herod dies. When they hear that Herod dies, they come back. They can't resettle in Bethlehem like they want. They resettle in Nazareth. If Matthew is right that they went down to Egypt for months or years or however long, how can Luke be right that they immediately returned to Nazareth?
And what is the answer to that question?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
now I can't believe that he doesn't know. I have so this is where I think Bart Ehrman tends to be a bit disingenuous, is because he should know. You should know the opposition to the argument you're making if you're going to make arguments, and he's saying he doesn't know. Now, again, either he genuinely doesn't know, and he's so arrogant that he never took time to actually go and seek what would be the scripture, because it's not super deep, or he's doing this on purpose. I think it's one of the two.
Yeah, you have to make something up.
You have to make something up.
In this video,
so shout out to Red Pen Logic. Does an amazing job breaking this down. Watch this.
New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman offers Alex O'Connor an example of what he believes to be an irreconcilable contradiction in the Christmas accounts. Now, before we look at the specific supposed contradiction, let me make a general observation. Many alleged Bible contradictions arise from applying unnecessary assumptions or false expectations to the Bible.
That's step one. Don't apply unnecessary assumptions to the Bible. The Bible is not an encyclopedia. The Bible is not a FAQ. The Bible is not a science textbook, right? So when you're applying these expectations to Scripture, you're really going to play yourself, because that's not how it was designed. That's not the point. And so I think, for starters, this is a great point that he makes here.
In many cases, the alleged contradiction stems from the reader misunderstanding or even misrepresenting the author's original intent.
So is Bart Ehrman misunderstanding or misrepresenting what he's about to say next? Is he misunderstanding or is he misrepresenting? I'm curious.
Let me show you what I mean. Ehrman challenges his students to read the Christmas accounts in Matthew and Luke and make a list of events for each. What you will find is some similarity, like Jesus being born in Bethlehem, of a virgin, and after his birth returning to Nazareth. But you will also find differences, like the Magi and the trip to Egypt in Matthew, and the shepherds and the trip to the temple in Luke. While Matthew and Luke give some different details, it's not clear that this amounts to a genuine contradiction. Here's why. For this to be a genuine contradiction, the reader must assume two things. First, they assume that silence about an event is denial of an event.
Silence of an event is not denial of an event. Just like if you were to come and ask me, hey, Ruslan, what'd you do today? And I say, hey, man, got up, hung with my daughter, I ran to the post office, came, got some work done. But if you were to ask my wife, hey, what did Ruslan do today? She would say, he got up, he went to the gym. I think he did something on Instagram. I think he's doing his daily proverb thing on Instagram. Then he does his Devo, and then he works out, and then he came home, he took a shower, hung out with his daughter and the kids, and then he went to work for a while, and then in the middle of the day, he ran to the post office to make sure your prayer journals were shipped on time. And then he went to Best Buy, and then he came in, and now he's doing a stream. You see how both accounts are true? I left out some details because I didn't think it was relevant for you to know that I went to Best Buy and that I went to the gym. Maybe my wife thinks it's relevant. It's two different perspectives on what is a priority in communicating what happened today. Both are true.
But this is a textbook example of an argument from silence, trying to reason from what a source does not say to the conclusion that something did not happen. Since Luke is silent on Jesus going to Egypt, the argument goes, therefore Luke denies Jesus went to Egypt. True, Luke doesn't mention the trip to Egypt. But what follows from that? The answer's simple. Nothing. Luke's silence is not a denial.
That's right.
Now I know what you're thinking, but Tim, Luke says when they had performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned into Galilee to their own town of Nazareth. There it is. Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth. This leads to the second assumption. Second, the reader assumes Luke's describing immediate consecutive events. Luke does say that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus returned to Nazareth, and it says that it was after making sacrifices for ritual purification in Jerusalem. The question is, was it immediately after or eventually after? Well,
That's a good question, right? Immediately after, eventually after, the sequencing of things, or the audience that it's been written to. Luke may not think that those details are essential to the audience. Matthew may think that those details are essential to the audience. There's so many different layers to and factors in play here.
Well, Matthew seems to hint that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus had a longer stay in Bethlehem, possibly even 2 years. This might explain why Herod ordered the killing of all the male children in Bethlehem 2 years and under. So can these two accounts be reconciled? Yeah, and I don't think it's terribly hard to see how. Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem. Jesus is born and the shepherds visit. 40 days after Jesus' birth, they go to the temple in Jerusalem to fulfill the law. Then they return to their home in Bethlehem. They meet the Magi. Then, after being warned in a dream about Herod's plot, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus flee to Egypt to escape.
Very, very simple. Very easy. I don't understand why this is hard for Bart Ehrman. So when he says, I don't know, has he really never heard this?
Finally, when Herod is dead, they begin to travel back to Judea, to Bethlehem. But after being warned in another dream, they go to Nazareth instead. This series of events is totally consistent with both accounts.
Shout out to Red Pen Logic, massive L for Bart Ehrman. I think sometimes guys just go on platforms and they're just kind of talking. They're just kind of talking and saying stuff. They're not really thinking through what they're trying to say and what the objective is. They're just kind of saying stuff, And I don't know. As a scholar, I don't know if that would be advantageous as a scholar to put these things out there. We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.